everyone, it's Louisa Tannemanson from Feel Good Astrology, and I've got a lovely Feel Good conversation with you. We've got a repeat guest due to join us very shortly. In fact, I've just got a message from him. I'm just wondering if he's okay. Oh, he's got a problem with his camera. Oh no. Well, hopefully we will be able to get him to join us, because we've got quite a few questions from people who are due to be joining us. While I'm waiting for Robert to join us, let me just share a few bits of information about him. So for those of you that joined us back in, I think it was the end of August, we were joined by Robert Jardine, who is somebody who's absolutely fascinated by understanding how things work, how things fit together. So back in 1989, and I think this is in Scotland, he was involved in a really serious motor accident, and it left him in a coma for several weeks. And, took quite a long time for him to recover. Now, he was, I believe, let me just double check. I think he's an engineer by trade. Let me just double check that. Yes, an engineer and technician by profession. And so, with his absolute inquiring mind and wanting to find out how things worked, and then with his new interest in healing and recovering, this really got him on his journey into understanding how things are. I can see I've got a few people joining us. So, in fact, while we're waiting for Robert to join us, let's just welcome you. Let us know where you're from and your name so we can say hello. Also, if you have a question for Robert, then all you need to do is just, pop it into the chat. We do actually have quite a few questions already lined up. But yes, if you have a question for him, I'm sure he will crack on and try and answer it for you to the best of his abilities. Let me just see if there's any more information from him. He's still got a problem with his camera, so let's maybe talk a little bit around what he does and how I've experienced what he does. So, I mean, Robert hasn't. Oh, here he is now, actually. Let's just see if I can add him in. Hey, Robert, you there? I can see you.
Yeah.
I can hear you too, so that's a really good start.
I had to switch the computer off and start it again, and it seems to have been able to connect. So I'm not sure why that was, but there you go. These things happen.
No problem at all. It does happen. It happens a lot. So yeah, I'm just glad that you're here, because we've got lots of questions, and I can already see that we've got quite a few people watching. So is there anything you wanted to say to start off with at all? Any thought before we get cracking?
Well, just I hope that this is of value to people, and really just look at this interview as a gateway into going further yourself with your research. We'll give you a website to go to, which it's the one I use a lot. It's really the sort of all the English translation of his work, Dr. Hammer's work. So that's a good thing to do. So let's look at this sort of interview as well. Okay, I'll answer some questions and that, but just to show the power of this new medicine, which is just the most incredible discovery that mankind's ever made. So that's it, really. Just let's go and let's do our best.
Excellent. So like I said, we've got quite a few questions, and I've had some more coming in during the day. Before we really get into the questions, would you be able to sort of give us a little sort of rounded, in a nutshell, what German New Medicine is and how it works? I know we did this in the first chat that we had, but if you put it in a nutshell, how might you do that?
Okay. Well, German New Medicine is the first and the only explanation as to exactly why we develop what is commonly or currently called disease. And German New Medicine is based on objective scientific verification, and it's a true science. It's not like normal medicine, which is a hypothesis based on another hypothesis, German medicine is an factual description of how and why the body creates symptoms, And in that knowledge, it gives us the opportunity to reverse those symptoms and take our own health into our own hands.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I'm not mistaken, it works on a couple of premises. So one of the things that I've noticed about it is it seems to refer back to a time of trauma. Is that right? Or a conflict, like a biological conflict that somebody might
Yeah.
be experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay. So, Dr. Hammer, who was the guy who made these discoveries, he discovered 5 biological laws which apply to all diseases in every living creature.
Wow.
And the first law that he described is called the iron rule of cancer, right? But it doesn't relate to cancer. It just happens to be it. When he named that law, it was cancer that he was studying. So it
Yeah.
relates to all diseases. And the iron rule is this, that all symptoms, no matter what they are, they initially start from a trauma. It can be a big trauma or a little trauma. And even though that's not contradiction of words, it's just something that catches us off guard on the wrong foot. We feel isolated. And
Mm.
instead of our conscious mind coping with that situation, the biological mind steps forward and it does something biological to help us deal with this, with the life issue. It helps us deal with it in a biological way. So it all starts with something in life that was unexpected, shocks, big or small, and it's our bodies reacting biologically to that. And
Yeah.
then when you understand that, well, if you don't understand that, you just don't connect the dots, and you think, oh well, I've got arthritis, or I've got thrush, or I've got, I don't know, something else, right? You think, well, that's just an entity on itself, but that's not. That symptom is just part of a biological process. And when you
Mhm.
understand the biological process, you can then start to become empowered within that process and start to be able to direct it in a direction that's, is good for your outcome,
Fantastic. So, I guess this is about empowering people to take their health into their own hands and to understand it. And I guess it's the full idea of being responsible for yourself. Like if you realize that you really are responsible for your health and your healing, that gives you an amazing and incredible power, doesn't it?
It's the most empowering, most empowering information that I've ever come across.
Mm.
We try to learn things to improve our lives, or to make us better able to do something, right? And when it comes to managing our own health, we're all too quick to give it off to somebody else, to give it off to a doctor, or to give it off to somebody else who we perceive that knows more than we do. But the
Yeah.
truth, when we know the 5 biological laws, which are they're not so difficult to learn, we realize that the only person that can heal me is me. The only person that can heal you is you. I can help you get to a place where you can heal yourself, but healing is not done through giving drugs or giving herbs or giving, you know, um, from outside. The
Mm.
symptom has come from the inside, and the healing has to come from the inside.
Mm.
And the good, well, one sort of thing that is sort of not good, but it's very convincing about German new medicine, is that it is 100% repeatable in 100% of the cases. So as of its discovery back in 1979, 1980, as of its discovery, there's not been one single variation from it. There's been no, it's never been wrong, not once.
So, I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? And uh,
Mhm.
as I understand it, Dr. Hammer tried to bring his knowledge into Western medicine and
Mhm.
tried to get it recognized, or was really trying to do the right thing. What I'm hearing from you is, like how all the other creatures on the planet seem to know who they are. They seem to know what they're supposed to be doing, what they're supposed to be eating, how they're supposed to be living. It's like they
Yeah.
all instinctively know the handbook of
Mhm.
what it is, a bit like an owner's manual that you have for your car.
Mhm.
So German new medicine, what I'm hearing is it's like an owner's manual, for your body.
Yeah, I think it's because the human, um, species has become so intellectual that we've
Mm,
kind of lost contact with our instincts, so that we have to sort of we can't feel our instincts anymore. So
mm,
we have to sort of learn about them. You know, we need help to know, to just rediscover them, or to so we can interpret them. um,
yeah.
and other creatures don't have such a strong mind, which is constantly analyzing and rationalizing things. You know, like I might get frightened about something, then my mind will say, oh, you shouldn't be frightened at your age, Robert. Or, you know, and then of course, that's it. You know, my body's told me I don't want to be there, but I've said, hey, I should go there, you know.
Yeah.
And we've got this problem. Other animals, you know, if our dog doesn't want to go somewhere, we know about that. It doesn't want to
Yeah.
go, and that's it.
Yes.
And that's the thing, you know. So poor old mankind, he's probably his own worst enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, you're right. We do rationalize things, don't we? And we don't follow through on our feelings.
Yeah,
And in fact, it's frowned upon, isn't it? Being in touch with instincts, it's frowned upon because
yeah.
it seems animal by default, isn't it? You know,
Hmm.
it seems like a kind of behavior that is behind us or beneath us. Um,
Yeah.
that's
And
fantastic.
as well, we also we have such a and sort of mechanism where we can be socially manipulated,
Mm,
to do things that we wouldn't actually do, but we can be manipulated into that. And you know, it's just mankind's a bit of a victim of his own success in evolution. Really, we've come out at the top of the pile,
mm.
but it's made us vulnerable in some ways. I mean, I don't really think that, for example, giraffes have so many maladies as humans do.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, and actually, if you look at animals, they don't seem to be overweight. You know, the only
No.
animals that we see that are overweight are ones that we've fed.
Mhm.
You know, they're the
Yeah,
ones that you know, and they're the ones with the psychological disturbances, aren't they? You know,
yeah,
animals left alone in their own environment just seem to live quite peacefully until there is this one event that kills them off or they die.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the discoveries that Dr. Hammer made. It relates to the animal part of us, the physical functioning of our body, because it, it only makes sense that your body wants to keep you alive. And
Yes.
if you can just accept that knowledge, right? Okay, my body wants to keep me alive. So whatever's happened in my body, it must have been trying to keep me alive. So if I've
Mm,
got a stomach ulcer, somehow that stomach ulcer, from the perspective of my body, must have been it's doing it for my greater good,
mm,
even though it might not be in my, you know, it might not keep me alive, and it might make me very ill. The underlying reason why it happened is for my survival. And if we look back in evolution at the time when that bodily reaction was developed within us,
mm.
it was just the right thing to do at that time. It was just the right thing to help that creature survive. And
Yeah.
that's how Dr. Hammer was able to beautifully tie together evolution,
Mm.
also the science, the study of you know life, you know, like from conception right through to becoming a little fetus and then to becoming a little baby. The medical, medical. I was going to say medical science, which is a contradiction in words, but medical understandings, right? Um, he was able to align everything, and it all fits so beautiful with evolution. An actual eight, I think. Oh, there's a science where they study the, you know, from conception onwards, right? And it's like how the body forms and such, right? Well, it all fits beautifully within his German new medicine, and
Mhm.
everything. It's kind of like his discoveries explains everything. All the different forms of healing and medicine, when you understand his knowledge, it ties them all together, or what is valid in them, and we understand all of a sudden why we get the ulcer, and why we get the heart attack,
Mm.
or why your mother-in-law gets Alzheimer's when she goes into the old folks home, or you know,
Yes.
it's there's a reason behind it, and it's so in that, it's like just what you said. It's a handbook that
Yeah.
of how we work.
Wow.
And then no one else is going to do it for you. You know, you're going to have to come either learn it yourself and benefit yourself, or go to somebody else who will help coach you through that. But that's the only options you got, because no other health modality, you know, conventional or otherwise, is gonna has really cottoned onto it yet. You know,
Mm.
so
Yeah, I mean, I can see some overlaps between like related health disciplines. Like, for instance, I'm a real sort of advocate of homeopathy, and if I hadn't have studied astrology, I may well have actually studied homeopathy, because there's something about it that really grabs me. And in the time that I've used a homeopathic doctor, I've really got clear about the link between the emotions and like the past emotions and what might be going on, like layers and
yeah,
layers of emotions. But I guess this is actually going before the emotions. It's going to the trigger of the emotions. It's looking at the emotional
yeah,
trigger. And when people go to the doctors with, say, like you were talking about, a stomach ulcer, when they go to the doctors about the stomach ulcer, they're looking just at the stomach ulcer in the
yeah.
here and now, and aren't looking at the whole picture, because
Mm.
nobody knows to look at the original trauma that might actually explain what's going on.
Hmm. Yeah, and the thing that really tied German new medicine, really consolidated it all, is the brain scans, because the brain
Mm.
scans tell the truth. You know, if you look
Yeah,
at a brain scan, you can see that person has got a stomach ulcer, and that's
yeah.
it. You don't even need to meet the person. You say, "Oh, that person's got a stomach ulcer," and every person that has a
Wow.
stomach ulcer has suffered the same biological conflict.
Wow.
The same. I mean,
Mm.
the life event which caused that conflict may be different,
Mm.
and but everyone who has a stomach ulcer has suffered a territorial anger. It
Right.
could also be an identity conflict as well. It depends what Dr. Hammer also discovered, which is the most amazing, fascinating discovery, right? Is that left-handed people and right-handed people, yeah, they suffer, well, they suffer the same conflicts, but a left-handed person, the brain relay is swapped over. So if I suffer a territorial anger, right, I get stomach ulcer. But
Mhm.
if I was left-handed, I would get hemorrhoids. End of.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Now you think, well, I don't know which I prefer, but hemorrhoids will never kill you, right?
No.
Stomach ulcer can kill you. So
Yes.
left-handers are the survivors.
Well, that was going to be one of my questions. I've actually
Yeah,
thing around it. Like, is it sort of biologically favorable to be left or right-handed? You know, I'm a left-hander.
yeah. It well, it depends on how
Yeah.
life is. You see, if life's good on the earth and we're all getting on, and you know, then a right-hander is the advantage.
Yeah.
Um, but if life gets hard, right,
Mhm.
which it kind of is at the moment, but it's not
Yeah.
uh, it's not naturally hard. So I don't know if it would apply to the current madness that's going on. But if life, if evolution, if there was a sudden, you know, if global warming got really bad or went to super cold or something, and life became really hard, the left-handers are the survivors.
Why is that, do you think?
Well, because when they suffer the nature has designed it that way. So when they suffer the conflicts, especially the conflicts in what's called the territorial conflicts, which are on the temporal lobes on the side of the head here, these are the most modern relays to develop. And um, you know, for example, you can have bronchitis, you can have laryngitis if you're left-handed, or bronchitis if you're right-handed. Bronchitis is potentially more dangerous to us.
Mm.
Okay, um, you can have a major coronary artery heart attack, which will kill you dead. Or
Mm.
if you're left-handed, you could end up having a coronary vein, a pulmonary embolism, which isn't so catastrophic
Yeah.
by suffering the same conflict.
Mm.
So it's, you know, when you look at it on the whole, if life was really cutthroat, if there was no law and order, if there was no Aldi's, right? If there was no roads, if we were back to pure survival, right? The left-handers would have the advantage.
Wow.
Another reason why is that when an average pack, I believe we're designed to live in a pack of about 10 people, or I know if it's 10 of each, probably 10 men and associated women, right? And it's roughly about 1 in 10 men are alpha wolves, and they're always right-handed.
Right.
Okay, they're always right-handed, and when you do a brain scan of an alpha wolf person, there's none of the temporal lobe relays have been activated, so they grow. The man basically grows to his maximum physical abilities, and that makes him stronger. And he, in evolution, the pack, because we're pack animals, right? In evolution, right, the pack is kind of designed to be roughly about that size, around about 10 males, and I'm not quite sure how many females, perhaps the same. And there's a leader, and then if the leader gets killed, they want someone to take in, and that is usually a left-hander.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're alpha wolves in waiting, right? And then the left-hander will become the alpha wolf of the pack until the next right-hander alpha wolf comes through. It might take some years before he becomes mature and strong enough. But that's the kind of dynamic. And the same thing happens in wolf packs. You get left pod and right pod. Well, then it's the same mechanism. And the reason, the sort of some of the logic behind that assumption or that understanding is that a left-hander with his first territorial conflict, which makes him a second wolf, right? When you have your first territorial conflict. But what it does with the left-hander was it increases his testosterone. So he becomes a high testosterone second wolf. Whereas the first conflict in a right-handed man, it reduces his testosterone. So he becomes more, he can talk, he can compromise easier, and that helps the pack when life is good. But when life's really hard and evolution is, when we're in a real natural environment, then it's the left-handers. They're the ones that will help the pack survive until the next alpha wolf comes through. So it all plays a part in this tapestry of evolution. It's just amazing how it's just mankind and life itself is designed to help life coexist. A pack is a unit of people that is needed. It's all interdependent, and we don't need two alpha wolves, because you've got trouble. You can't have two alpha wolves, right? So you got to have an alpha wolf and a couple of left-handers ready to go in if he gets killed, and then the next alpha wolf comes forward, and so it goes on. And this is, don't you find that incredible that that's what we are?
I love that. I also notice in myself that I'm quite happy working on my own, but I'm also very happy being a right-hand person. I don't really like managing large groups. Facilitating videos and training courses and stuff is great, but I would never want to be the boss of a big organization. But I'd be very happy to be the right-hand man or a left-hand woman.
Just to touch on one thing, a left-handed woman when a woman suffers her first territorial conflict, in a right-handed woman, it goes into her left temporal lobe, which reduces her estrogen. It reduces her fertility, right? But with a left-handed woman with her first territorial conflict, she suffers the same conflict as is registered in these relays, right? But it gets transposed to the right hemisphere, and it makes her super estrogen. It makes her more fertile.
I'm not surprised by that. It's really funny because it's my husband. Like when I met
Don't
my
get
husband,
too personal.
I'm not going to reveal some of those things that, we've had in our threads. You know, it's like when you're opening up and making links between symptoms and things, and all of a sudden your whole history comes out. It's a bit embarrassing. But I've been very fertile since I've been with Carl, my husband. And like for years, it looked like I might be barren or might be infertile. And then I meet Carl, and all of a sudden, I think I've had 5 pregnancies, and 3 that have manifested. So yeah, and that's at age 36, when people are saying, oh yeah, past it. It's like, yeah, it's surprising. We're joined here by quite a few people, and there's a couple that just said hello, so I just wanted to say hello back. So we've got Gary Austin from Central Portugal, who's saying, I agree, we can learn a lot by rediscovering and rewilding our instincts. He's our man in the forest actually at the moment. Gary's very outdoorsy. I've been experimenting with this a lot lately and found it to be very rewarding. We are part of wild nature and we should listen to it more.
Yeah, exactly. Because I tell you why that's such a true statement, because when our psyche experiences a biological conflict, it does 2 things. It's almost if the shock comes in and it hits the psyche, right? And up the way, we get an emotion, and down the way, we get a biological change. And if we're not in contact with that emotion, you'll get something going on with you biologically, a disease, and you won't know where it's come from. But if you can actually realize that everything that we feel is a message from our biological brain telling us that it's given us a message, and being in touch with what we really are, and living in accordance with what we really are, it's definitely the road to health and happiness, I believe.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you, Gary. Thank you for joining us. We've also got a good morning from Texas from our good friend, Shannon Renee Brown. And Shannon's just become a grandmother for the 2nd time. Wow. So congratulations on air for the birth of Cora. So should we have a look at the questions, some of the questions that we've got in? I've actually typed them out, so there are a few typos. You have to excuse those. The first question that has come in is from Dee, who is a right-handed lady who is actually she might be 71 now, but she's saying how to deal with long-term chronic illnesses or issues like arthritis. And she also shared with me that her and her mum also have these kind of really knobbly fingers, and Dee is somebody who links in emotions with symptoms, and looks deeper at things. And she was wondering if the biological need to hold on to things and grasp things might have created this kind of knobbly fingers. But anyway, she wants to know how to deal with long-term chronic issues like arthritis, like what might be behind it.
Well, sometimes it's not easy to find the conflicts, but it is a conflict. So arthritis affects the bones and or the skeleton, and the skeleton and everything attached to it or within it is controlled from the cerebral medulla, which is inside. It's kind of in the new top half of the brain, but it's in a bit. It's not this. It's not this cortex, which is the very sort of wobbly bit that you associate with a picture of a brain. It's inside that, and it is designed to improve our bodies, to help us. Initially to help us stay alive. I mean, that's what the point of evolution is. We're constantly trying to improve the physical structure and our behavior as well to help us survive, right? So the arthritis is it's a symptom, so therefore we know it's part of a biological process. Now, every biological process has 2 halves, provided there's some kind of resolution to the issue. The first half is that you have the shock and the issue starts. When that shock gets resolved, the healing starts. When the healing's finished, you're back to normal again. But then what happens if you start another conflict, the same shock comes back into your life, then it all goes on and on and on. So when bones are affected, the first part of when the shock comes in and then the body starts to respond to that shock, we have osteoclasts. These are cells within the bone which disassemble the bone. Osteoblasts are the cells within a bone which build bone, and osteoclasts take bone down. And bone is a dynamic tissue. It's constantly getting built and it's constantly getting taken down. And it's like two massive piles of workmen building a block of flats and taking it down, building it, and it just stays at the same height, right? Never goes up, never goes down, because one's taking the bricks up, one's taking the bricks down. But when we suffer a self-devaluation conflict, what happens is the guys taking the bricks up stop, and the ones taking them down keep going, and that starts a weakening of the bone. Then, when the emotional conflict is resolved, it starts to reverse. But before it reverses, it doesn't reverse straight away, and there's a bit, let's say, for the sake of this analogy, there's a bit of confusion and they don't know what ladder to go up. So the bone gets even weaker for a bit and then starts to rebuild and get stronger and some. So at the end of the process, the block of flats will be back up to its same height and another story. Right? Now, if this process happens again, where we suffer the same emotional life issue comes in and the body feels feel like it's not good enough to cope with that issue, right? It all starts again. The builders take the bricks down, and then when it gets resolved, they put it back up, and there's a bit of confusion, add some. So that's why the bones get knobbly, because the bones are being disassembled and reassembled and some.
Wow.
And the biological purposes in evolution, well, if it's bigger, it's better, right? So if the bone's bigger, it's better. If you break your leg and then it heals up, you'll never break it in the same place again. If you look at an X-ray of a broken bone, it'll be a big lump where it was broken.
Right.
So therefore, it's stronger where it was broken. So the body has actually made the bone stronger there. Well, the exact same thing happens when we suffer self-devaluation conflict relating to life, right? So what happens is, let's say I think, right, I've been made a fool of. I say, I just, let's say I do something, I become very self-judgmental about myself, about being extremely stupid or being very thick, or I'm not intelligent enough, or somebody tells me that, or I'm made to believe that, right? So my cervical spine in my neck here is likely to respond to that. And if that process then goes on all my life, it starts to deform the vertebrae, and I end up with lordosis, kyphosis, and there's another one, I forget what it's called, but there's all these deformations of the spine, which was one of the questions that you sent to me, and that is the mechanism. It's this constant ebbing and flowing of bone tissue, because there's an ebbing and flowing of a life self-devaluation issue. And it starts to deform the bone. So the bone then starts to deform, and then the spine deforms, and then you see the person, you get scoliosis, lordosis, and kyphosis. That's the ones that I'm aware of, right? And there's the mechanism. And you can see it happening in the brain if you take the pictures. So the key to that kind of arthritis is the same. Like your hands, okay, so your hands, you get the joints getting big and knobbly knuckles. Right? So, well, that's because this process is going in and out, like the tide at the seaside. It comes in and out. Every time it comes in, it washes some sand up, and then it takes most of it back out. Over time, it builds up and up and up. And it's the same kind of process, which is driven by an emotional reaction to something in life, to do with your dexterity. And you got to think then, okay, so if it's my hands, well, what are my hand? What does my body perceive my hands as? Well, they're the parts of my body which I do things with, and my dexterity. I don't walk on my hands, right? I don't eat with my hand. Well, I can eat with my hands, but I don't, like, it's not my jaw. Like, I eat with my jaw. I don't think with my hands. I do things with my hands. So it might be a self-devaluation of either having to do things you don't want to do, or not doing things well enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's not easy, but what Dr. Hammer has done is he's been able to section off all the parts of the body and give us quite a good guideline as to what kind of issues will affect what kind of what part of the body. So that's amazing, right? I mean, that's really, it gives us an understanding. Okay, so arthritis isn't because I'm menopausal, or isn't because I don't drink enough, don't eat enough, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. It's not to do with that. It's to do with our interaction with life. And if we become activated to an issue in life, then that issue is controlling us. So our body is now reactive to that life issue. And if it's reacting with a self-devaluation conflict, then the bones are coming and going, and we end up with bone deformation. And so it's really to look at, to overcome that. There's a couple of things you can do. Firstly, you think of when did it start? So that gives you an idea what it might have been. And then you can look at what part of the body it is. So then that gives you an idea of what conflict your psyche has experienced, not your conscious mind, but your biological brain. And usually the resolution is a practical one. So if you can actually do or overcome what the body is reacting to, that will stop the process.
Yeah.
Okay, so things like kyphosis and the spinal deformations, they will not correct, but they'll stop getting worse.
Yeah. Which is important. That's absolutely fascinating. So that's Dee's question answered. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Dee. That's a great question.
I find it really fascinating. We've got a question here from Mike. Funnily enough, about teeth. So, I mean, again, that's like related to the bones. Mike wants to know about tooth decay. He's saying Chinese medicine links tooth decay to various organs. Does this match your philosophy? And if so, how do you deal with it? Mike is right-handed, and it should say 73-ish, but it's one of my typos.
Yeah. Well, teeth. Would you believe that the hard part of tooth, the enamel, is basically skin. Same as this skin. Yeah, calcified skin. Yeah, it's basically fundamentally it's squamous cells which are calcified, and the inside of the tooth is more pulpous. It's bone. It's bone. I think it's bone. Yes, it's bone, and it's controlled from the medulla. Now, what Dr. Hammer has discovered is that, and it's proven in the brain scans, because you can actually see if you do a brain scan of somebody and you know how to read them, right? You can actually see every tooth that's got a hole in it. You can see any tooth decay going on, right? And you can tell whether it's the enamel or the bone inside the enamel, just by looking at the brain scan. Yeah.
And presumably as well, you can see when the tooth has been removed.
No. If you remove the tooth, the brain scan won't show that. It'll still think there's a tooth there, because the brain's there, right? Okay. You just because you take a tooth out, you don't lose part of your brain. Your brain's still there, and it's still connected to something that's been pulled out.
Would it register as an injury to the?
No, not at all. I don't believe so. We experience through our senses, through our perceptions, right? Because we can imagine it too. We experience a shock. The psyche picks up on that. It initiates a brain relay. As soon as that starts, the body, whichever is connected to that relay in the brain, starts to adapt. So in this case of teeth, well, there's tissue, there's like skin tissue, which is controlled from the cortex of the brain. And you'll see the little hammer foci, which are these little ring patterns that you see. You'll see the hammer foci in the cortex of the brain. Whereas if it's in the bone, which is underneath the enamel, you'll see the brain relay in that bone of that tooth. And for your interest, the biological conflict which affects the enamel of the tooth is not being allowed to retaliate or bite back. Because in nature, teeth are for biting, right?
Yeah.
Fighting, biting. And in a pack situation, that's kind of how you get your way to the top. That's how you stand your ground, right? And so if we're in a life situation where obviously we can't go ripping the flesh of each other every time we have an argument at work, because that wouldn't that probably wouldn't do your promotion much good. But the thing is, the biology is still the same. So if we instinctively feel that we could bite, we could retaliate, but we're not allowed to for some reason, etiquette or there's something stopping us retaliating. That affects the enamel, right? The heart, the new bit, the squamous epithelial tissue, which is the enamel, right? But if we feel that we're not able to bite back, let's say the guy's 6'6" and a bit of a bruiser, and think, whoa, right, I don't want to. I'm a bit, I don't feel that I want to argue with that guy, even though he's being a real bad person and making my life hell, and I really want to pull his head off, right? I can't because he's big. So that kind of conflict will affect the inner bone, the bone. That is not being able to bite back, as opposed to not being allowed to bite back or not allowing myself to bite back.
That's a fascinating distinction, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've noticed in both boys. I sort of do extended breastfeeding for as long as possible. And one thing I do notice a lot actually in like tooth, like there's quite a few queries on forums from people who breastfeed a lot and their children's teeth start to decay. And people are saying, oh, milk's too sugary and it's because you're feeding well into the night. And I've always just thought, well, surely that's what mammals do. So surely that's not the issue because mammals will nurse whenever they want, and their teeth seem strong. But one thing I noticed in particular with my two boys who have both had, their baby teeth have been weaker, is that they started biting me or started chewing on my breast, and they got a really strong telling off. One of them consistently, whereas my daughter didn't do that at all, or barely, and she's got the strongest teeth. I'm just wondering if the shame of biting mum.
I'm not sure. To be honest with you, I'm not entirely sure about about milk teeth. To be honest, they might be different, right? Because I know that what I've learned is it's to do with adult teeth, and milk. The first set of teeth, I really don't know how connected they are, because they're not designed to be in us that long. But and another thing is, right, if sugar is what makes our teeth rot, well, you get some people eat a lot of sugar and have good teeth, and you get some people that eat a lot of sugar and have bad teeth. Or you get some people that don't have any, eat very little sugar and have good teeth, and some people that don't eat very much sugar and have bad teeth.
Yeah.
It's that okay, but when you look at the brain scan, everybody that's got a carie in the tooth or a piece of tooth decay happening, right? Everyone has got an active hammer foci in the brain, really.
Yeah.
And I just want to finish on the teeth as well. Is that it only gets sore when it goes into healing. So Dr. Hammer, I believe, he said that it's a healing symptom. If you can actually last out the toothache, it will finish its process and rebuild itself, and it'll be pretty much okay when it's finished. But because we don't like the tooth decay, and the pain it causes might cause secondary conflicts. So we get it taken out or drilled and filled up with stuff to which I do too. I don't want to sit there for 6 or 8 months with howling toothache, hoping that nature will fix my tooth. And I go to the dentist as well. I'm not so purist as that.
I've got a comment from Shannon actually in Texas. She's saying it's very interesting about the tooth. I had a bottom tooth taken out, and the dentist said I should think about taking the top one out because they don't like a void. I'm like, nope, not unless something is wrong with it. It's funny actually because with my eldest son, we've got this fantastic biological dentist in the south of Portugal, and he has people fly in from the United States to see him because
Wow.
there are not very many people that do it. And when I showed him my son's teeth, he wasn't remotely bothered about a little bit of decay because he said and obviously you won't hear this from any other dentist. You know, every other dentist that's listening will be like horrified and thinking like, you know, some kind of abuse. But this dentist who's well respected, he's saying, you know, that bacteria is doing a proper job. It's in place to do a specific job. And he says
He's totally right. Yeah.
And you've got to keep all your teeth where they are. So he actually advised us not to take out a tooth that was looking a little bit sorry for itself because it would affect all the other teeth. And when it came out naturally, it was the right time.
Well, I mean, that ties in with Dr. Hammer's fourth law. This fourth law it's called the ontogenetic system of microbes. And it tells us that all microbes, all fungi, and all bacteria, all of them, all fungi, all bacteria, and it's now been thoroughly proven that viruses are a figment of a scientific surreal imagination, so they don't actually exist in reality. But if they did exist, they would be classified in the same. And that's how, because Dr. Hammer died before this, you know, before viruses were completely overturned. But he said all bacteria, all fungi, and all viruses, if they should be proven to exist, are playing an active role within the body, and they're being controlled. Every single one of them is being controlled by our psyche to do something in the body that it wants done.
Yeah.
So bacteria never cause decay in a tooth, never ever cause decay in a tooth. They actually only become activated when the emotional conflict has been resolved, and the psyche then says, right, now I need some biological activity done there to rebuild that tooth. Well, actually, it might need to dismantle it a little bit before it rebuilds it, because the inner tooth, like I said, the inner tooth is bone. And remember, we talked about arthritis, and we said, well, bone, there's this kind of bricks going up and bricks going down, and there's a bit of confusion when they first swap over and stuff. Well, it's the same with the tooth, the bone inside the tooth. So the bacteria are then directed to go to the tooth to remove whatever's needed to be removed, which is now, you know, it's no good anymore. And then the bacteria then help to rebuild and recalcify that tooth back to as good as it was before you took the emotional trauma. So your dentist bang on right. I mean, you know, if you've got a bacteria or a fungi active in you, whether it's thrush, athlete's foot, whether you've got a bacterial throat infection, you know, killing the bacteria is like, you know, it's not killing the cause of that problem. It's actually killing something that's trying to help that biological process to a successful end.
Yeah. It's fascinating saying that, like, because if you think about yeasts or molds or fungi in nature, like we can observe, you know, mushrooms and fungi are there to break down things where things are decaying and things need to be broken down so that the different parts of the decayed matter can be used somewhere else, because this is a living, organic, intelligent system. Fascinating. Yeah, because I've never really thought about it like that. It's like, oh, I can accept that fungi has a place in nature, but mustn't be in me.
Yeah,
it's funny, isn't it, how we like that?
Yeah, and so Dr. Hammer's work even gives us precise information. For example, fungi will only be found in parts of the body which are controlled by the reptilian brain, the old brain, the brain, basically the brainstem, and I think perhaps the cerebellum to a small degree, right? But I'm not even sure. I'm not. Yeah, I think so. I think the fungi can be involved with that too. So it's got to be either in your cerebellum or your brainstem. So therefore, turn that round. If you've got a fungal infection, you know that the tissue or the brain relay which is driving that biological process, which needs that fungi there to do it, is controlled from the old brain. So then that tells you what type of conflict it was. So it helps us. Knowing what type of bacteria we have tells us a whole pile about what kind of conflict we've suffered and which part of the brain's been affected. It's a real huge help, you know. If somebody says, "Oh, you know, I don't know, like I'm sweating every night. I'm sweating all night. Every night I go to sleep, I'm sweating, right? Wake up sodden and sweat. Then you know, oh well, that there's going to be mycobacteria, which are the most basic type of old sort of simple type of bacteria, like tubercular bacteria, right? So you know that those bacteria are active in that person and they're removing tissue which is now no longer needed by the biological process. So you know that it's controlled from the brainstem or cerebellum, and you know that they're in healing, and it's a good thing. It's a mine of information. It's really great. It's amazing, you know.
It really is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. That's incredible. I've had a message from Anna in South Africa, and she had breast cancer a while ago, and she opted to have her breast kept, so she didn't have it removed. But she did have, I think, standard treatments, but she also has sort of like natural treatments as well. As far as I know, she's made a recovery, and she was just wondering about what causes breast cancer in the right breast for a right-handed woman.
Okay, well, Dr. Hammer, his discoveries tell us that, well, I'm going to discuss two types of breast cancer. There's glandular breast cancer and there's intraductal breast cancer. So a breast is the mammary glands are there to produce milk to feed someone, right? We think of children, but it's actually the body's not actually wired up for that. For a right-handed woman, okay, the left breast is there to feed the child and the right breast is there to feed the partner.
Wow.
Yeah. If the partner, for example, becomes unwell and needs nourished to get it back living again so that it can provide for the family, the right breast on a right-handed woman is to do with that. And the exact opposite is the same for left-handed women. So a left-handed woman like you,
Yeah.
your right breast is wired inside your brain to feed or to be responding to issues relating to your children or your nest, as Dr. Hammer calls it, your nest. And your left breast, which is on your dominant side, is your pack breast. So it's to keep your pack alive, because without your pack, you're dead as well. So, and your family. So, you know, everyone's interdependent in a pack. So that's the first thing to say about the breast cancer. Okay. So if it's a glandular breast cancer that somebody had, Dr. Hammer's research says that it's like a fear for the well-being, or it can also be a real big argument, I think, a very big disagreement with, if it's on your opposite side, then it's your child or your mother, strangely enough. So it could be your child or somebody who you care for like a child. So it can be a stepchild, or it can be a grandchild, or it can even be your lovely little dog, right? Same as, but it's kind of your child, right?
Yeah.
Right. So if it's on your opposite side, it's to do with that. And if it's on your dominant side, so if you're right-handed, if it's your right breast, it's to do with somebody that you consider biologically in your pack. So for example, when I was studying German new medicine, there was an example, I think, given of a woman was standing by the curb holding her child's hand, and she was speaking to her pal, having a blah 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 blah, and then her little daughter, who's like say 4 years old, 5 years old, sees her friend across the road, and instinctively pulls a hand out of her mum's grip and dives across the road to see her friend, and gets hit by a car. Right now, the mother suddenly takes a shock. Right, well, she is likely to develop glandular breast cancer in her non-dominant breast, because the daughter's lying on the ground being hit by a car. She's not dead, but she's very ill. Her well-being is very much in question, right? And that woman, from that point on, that woman's psyche is activated onto that issue, and day and night she's thinking about her daughter. She's daughter's in hospital, for example, now, so the daughter's taken hospital. They don't know if she's going to pull through. The woman is like, oh my God, what did I do? How could I have done? She's going over and over and over and over in her head, trying to get over this issue, okay? And all the time that's happening, the the milk duct, the milk gland breast cancer, the glandular cancer is growing, because the body is saying, I'm going to feed you to get you well again. Yeah. So you need more breast tissue, you need more gland to make more milk. So it builds up the gland. The cells are bubbling, getting bigger and bigger. And in that kind of scenario, the lump is going to grow quick, because it's extremely shocking. Your daughter or your child is unwell. It's like top priority, isn't it? Right. So that cancer will grow fast in the breast that's opposite your dominant hand, right? So then, let's say 2 weeks later, you get a phone call from the doctor, says, do you know what? Your daughter's fine. She's come through really good. And, can you come and collect her? Then all of a sudden that cancer then goes into, that whole shock goes into resolution. So therefore the body follows the shocks. If the shock's in resolution, then the body goes into resolution. So then the tubercular bacteria and fungi will move in to remove that cancer, because it's now not needed. The baby's back to normal. Don't need extra milk. Get rid of it. So that's a glandular breast cancer. That's an example of how that would happen. Let's say the woman was standing on the pavement speaking with a child in her hand, and her mobile phone went off, and she gets a message saying, your husband has fallen off his motorbike, right? And he's critically ill. Well, then it would be the other breast. It would be her dominant breast. So if she's right-handed, it would be her right breast. But the same thing would happen.
So presumably for Anna in South Africa, the underlying cause of a breast cancer for Anna, who's right-handed, in her right breast would be a trauma to do with her husband, a partner, or a member of her pack who's important.
It would be a trauma to do. Yes, it's a trauma involving, exactly correct. But if it's a glandular breast cancer, now, an intraductal breast cancer, and bear in mind, intraductal breast cancers make approximately 90% of all breast cancers. Okay. So Dr. Hammer's research shows us clearly, unarguably so, that the intraductal breast cancer is only diagnosed when it goes into healing, when the emotional conflict is resolved and the breast or the body starts to put itself back to normal. The breast swells up and congests, and that's intraductal breast cancer. So it's a healing symptom, according to Dr. Hammer's research. I'm being very careful saying that, because we're discussing cancer, and there's legal implications with that. So my opinion is just my opinion only, and as I'm saying, I keep on referring to, it's Dr. Hammer's research, and everyone, it's in the public domain, anyone can check it. So
presumably the outcomes of somebody suffering from something like that would really depend on what stage of healing they're in when they go to a doctor. Because I mean, like, you hear about people going into remission where suddenly things just disappear, and for no reason. And then I guess, does it depend on when they go and visit the doctor? Like, how lucky they are?
Yeah, I mean, let me just finish a little bit on the breast cancer, because as I said, 90% of breast cancers, according to Dr. Hammer's research, is that they're the intraductal. Now, the conflict which causes those is a different conflict.
Okay.
It
What's that?
is, it is as if the child or the partner has been torn from my breast, torn out of my life, torn from me, okay? Like, oh, just, brutally just torn from me in some way, right?
So,
And
like with a partner, could that be like an affair, like somebody taking, like literally taking your husband, or
um,
like,
I'm
or work
maybe
or
I'm not
important?
sure. It, it I'm not sure. I mean, many things. When you're talking about the psychological or the life events which cause things, it can be many and varied. But when you get down to the biological brain, the psyche, it's always consistent. So it's always feeling that your partner has been torn from your breast, or your partner or your child's been torn from your breast, or, and this is quite common also, the need to tear the child from your breast or the partner from your breast. I know, amazing, isn't it? Because if they're so annoying you, if they are so plaguing your life, right, your body will say, God damn it, man, I've got to get rid of this, right? I
Yeah,
just
be
want
gone.
to rip this off. If this thing is sucking me dry, I want to get it off, right? And that also causes the introductor. Now what happens is, when that conflict is active, as in we're in that stage of, oh man, this I just want rid of this person, or, oh my lord, this person's being it's being torn from my breast, right? Let me get that right. Yes. So what happens is, the body says, well, you don't need the milk anymore, so we've got to get rid of it. So to do that, we'll make all the breast ducts wider. So it does a process of necrosis inside the breast ducts to make them wider, to help the milk drain out. Because let's face it, you've either wanted to rip the person from your breast, or the person's been torn from your breast, but you don't want that milk anymore.
Yeah.
That's the reason for it. But when we resolve that conflict, we come to terms with it, or something changes and it becomes resolved, then, and often overnight, I add, the breast swells up. It can happen overnight,
Mm.
because the conflict has been resolved. So it goes into healing. Healing comes with swelling and fluid and the activity of all microbes. There'll be less microbes involved with that one, because it's a modern conflict in a different part of the brain. Nevertheless, right, there will be a lot of metabolic activity. The breast will swell up. It'll become twice as big. It'll be quite hard. It'll be painful. There'll be there will be the sensitivity profile of that is that before the resolution, the sensitivity of the breast is reduced. Literally as soon as you resolve that conflict, within half an hour or less perhaps, the breast starts to hurt inside, and the nerves all become activated, and we
Mm.
start to feel we feel this horrible pain inside the breast. That's it all gone into healing. Now that gets diagnosed as an aggressive cancer of some type or other, and the whole process then gets put in place. But if you know this beautiful gift that Dr. Hammer has given the world, if you know that, if you've learned that before this happens to you, so that when it does happen, if I hope not, but if it does, you'll go, ah, this swole up today because of that happened yesterday,
Mm.
because of that phone call, and I had the big chat with my sister, and do you know what? We've put it all behind us, and all of a
Mm.
sudden, I wake up with so-called breast cancer the next day. Then the panic's not there. You go, oh right, so it's a healing symptom, fair enough. What have I got to do? Well, nothing. According to Dr. Hammer, right? You'd say, well, you just let it heal. If, on the other hand, it was a glandular breast cancer, that with the sort of the lump in the glandular tissue, when it was, you were worried about the well-being, or the life, in fact, of your child. The analogy was the child that got run over on the road, right? When that goes into healing, the body says, okay, get rid of that. We're going to use tubercular bacteria. Now that is a rotting process, and that can be, if it's not managed properly, it can be quite challenging to manage that, because it can actually rot its way out completely through the side of the breast and actually fall out. The rotting mass can actually fall out through the breast, not through the nipple, but through the whole side of the breast. And because the body just wants to, the only way the body, it's like it uses tubercular bacteria like surgeons. They just go in there, they just nibble, 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 and dissolve it and digest it and create pus. That's the byproduct of that. But it can actually, like I say, fall out the side of the breast. So that takes a little bit of managing, let's say, to do that. But if you know this, because let's face it, what, 1 in 3 of us is going to get cancer. Right? Well, another 1 in 3 of us is going to die of a heart attack, and another 1 in 3 of us is probably going to die of I don't know, an injection. But you know, we should all know this. This should be taught from primary school upwards. By the time somebody leaves primary school, they should know the 5 biological laws. I believe, yeah, they should know the 5 biological laws, and they should certainly know that diseases are not diseases, but they're our body's reactions. And then we can live, what's the word, responsibly.
Yeah. Yes, it does give you a new appreciation for the beautiful design that we have. And it's very brave of you to talk about that example, because you know, obviously people get shut down for daring to comment on something that is apparently all sewn up, and this is how it is, this is exactly as it is, no question. And you know, at a time when people say how irresponsible to, you know, to, you're putting people at risk saying that with your crazy ways, you know, like loads, there's that kind of narrative going on in the mainstream, and it becomes entrenched. Okay, can we move on to another question?
Yeah.
Take another one. So David, who is now living in Portugal, he had an accident many years ago, back in 2000, and he really hurt himself. He had a fall trauma, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, calcaneus fracture. I don't know, some kind of fracture. I believe it was in his legs, if I remember. He came onto another one of my shows to talk to somebody about pain. So I think he's been in a lot of pain, and he's been diagnosed with ankylosing spondylitis. And he's just wondering, you know, what's going on there. And he also added, apparently Tibetan medicine says that the disease is a disturbance which is karmic or even spiritual in nature. But he would like to know what your thoughts on it are, please.
Okay. Right, so that's affecting the bones, and we've discussed the bones. So bones are bones, right? So if there's a ankylosing spondylitis, I'm just going to check a little bit on that. I should have checked the ankylosing spondylitis. Right. So all right. So I've got you here. So that's a deviation. Where have you gone? Not looking at now. Oh, I've lost you. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
I can't see my picture now. I can't see where I am.
I'm still here.
Good. Oh, it's this duck thing I've got it. Yeah. Right. Okay. So, right. The spine is made up of bones which are stacked on top of each other, vertebrae, okay, and they're stacked all up from the base of the skull right down to the pelvis, right? They're stacked up. And we've discussed that. Well, perhaps I haven't. Our brains, we have a left half and a right half. So that's my right half of my brain, which probably looks left to you, I'm not sure, and that's my left half, right? Okay, so my right half of my brain is controls the left half of my body, and the left half of my brain controls the right half of my body.
Yeah.
And within my reactive instincts, or my reactions, that right, I either react to things with a perspective of either my pack or my nest. Boys and girls do the same. Men and women do the same. So ankylosing spondylitis, if you look at the vertebrae, there will be a section of vertebrae that's affected by it.
Right.
And what happens is either the right half of the vertebrae start to crumble and shrink, shorten, or the left half start to shrink. So it's either the right half or the left half, right? Now you can imagine the spine is like a pile of dominoes stacked up on top of each other, all held together with muscles, right? But nevertheless, it's a pile of bones all stacked up on each other like dominoes. If the left half of the dominoes, this is the left half, I'm watching myself, I'm getting confusing myself here. If the left half all start to get a little bit shrunk, a little bit crumpled, a little bit degraded, right? They change shape a little bit, and the spine starts to deviate to the left, because they all get a bit shorter on the left side and not on the right side. So the whole thing starts to crumple to the left. That's ankylosing spondylitis, right? Otherwise, if it's on the right side, then the spine starts to sort of go to that to the right or to the left, right? So you see the spine starts to curve. Now, what we know from Dr. Hammer's work is that bones are what he calls a self-devaluation, or not being good enough conflict, or not being able to cope conflict.
Yeah.
And if it's a right-handed person and it's deviating to the left, then we know that it's not been able to cope conflict with respect to my nest.
So maybe, so that gives us, so like if the accident has created lots of pain, maybe he has had some kind of feelings about not being able to provide for his nest, or not being as
exactly
enough for his nest.
Yes, I mean, you can, if you know exactly which parts of the spine, you can get even more sort of direction from Dr. Hammer's work. But in essence, it's the issue which is driving it. The way the brain is processing that issue, or the way the psyche has processed that issue, is that the significance of the event is pertaining to perhaps being able to provide for your family, something like that, or provide for your children. Or whereas if it was the other side,
so if he's left-handed and
it was going left.
Yeah.
If he's left, then it would be a pack related issue, usually partner.
Right.
Right. So it's a self. I can't say, I'm not going to pretend it's so easy to figure out what's caused it, right? I mean, if you've had a severe injury, fell off a ladder, so you fell off the roof of a house, okay, well, that shock, I mean, it can do physical damage, which is not really covered by Dr. Hammer's work, but there can be, we can suffer biological traumas as we hit the ground, which can. But I'm not sure if the actual trauma that this gentleman has had could be a direct cause of the ankylosing spondylitis, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a process where the bones are being altered by the body because of an emotion, our connection to a life issue, which is affecting us emotionally. So, it's because working with the bones, I find it anyway, it's such a long-term thing. If you get something like a stomach ulcer, like, you can kind of figure out what's caused that kind of quick. right?
Yeah.
But the bones, it's all happening before you. It's probably been happening for a couple of years before you even know it.
Mm.
You know, so I personally find it more challenging to figure that out. But that's the mechanism which causes you know, any deviations of the spine like that's the mechanism where the body is actually manipulating the structure of the bone that's involved, and it's been driven by a life issue which is unresolved.
Fantastic. Well, I hope that's
Okay.
helpful. I'll be forwarding on links to all the people that asked questions today.
Okay, great.
So I'm sure I'll get some feedback on that.
Yeah.
Have you got time to do any more? Because
Yeah.
we've been talking for an hour and a quarter now,
Oh,
and I don't want to wear you out or anything.
oh, my coffee's gone cold.
So I've got a couple of questions from Simon. So the first one, I had a jab last year, and shortly after, have a loss of strength in my legs, numbness, fatigue, and lethargy. Now, there's a couple of different things here, because could it be something to do with what's in the jab, or I'm guessing there's also a trauma about the jab. So I was wondering if you could talk about the sort of trauma that having a jab might cause. What are the effects of that? Because I mean, right now lots of people are having jabs, aren't they? And some people might not feel very happy about it. Lots of people, you know, I see some people going and having one of these because it's like a badge of honor, and then for other people it could be a very harrowing thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people might be having it. Sorry, I'm speaking over you there.
No, it's okay.
Okay, I think a lot of people perhaps also feel a bit pressurized into it, and they sort of go along with it because, well, you know, the pressure, the way it affects them, it's making them do that. And then afterwards, you know, they might start hearing another side to the tale, and you know, start to worry then retrospectively what's going on. So yeah, it's everyone's decision, and there's going to be loads. I mean, you know, there's going to be loads and loads of these jabs. We're going to be offered these regularly, so if we can always step off that bandwagon at any time, right? You know, you might have had one, but then you might not have another one, you know. Or likewise, you can always change your mind and then go and catch up and have 10 all in the same day if you suddenly change your mind, if you choose, right? So that's the way to, that's a kind of flexible way of thinking about it. So I'm trying to put a good spin on it really, but I can't. It's difficult. So the way I would look at my symptoms is I would look at the symptoms, and if you have what was it, loss of strength,
in my legs, numbness, fatigue, and lethargy, which almost sounds. I mean, I've had a loss of strength in my legs, numbness, fatigue, and lethargy after I had my
ME or something like that.
Yeah, I was diagnosed with ME and chronic fatigue syndrome.
Yeah,
it coincided just after I had my BCG.
Yeah. So you know, the trauma of having one of those procedures, or even a trauma that we then suffer after, if we've chosen to have one of those procedures and then have had severe second thoughts about it, we can give ourselves a worry. You know, we can respond. The biological brain is sitting below our conscious mind, watching everything through our senses, and it's also sensitive to what's going on in our conscious brain. So if we suddenly go, oh my god, you know, like we suddenly stumble on a website that tells a different truth, and we were, you know, that can be a shock to us that we just created within ourselves. It's not like an external, or even if we just suddenly sort of think, oh, you know, that was really crazy that I did that, and we give ourselves a shock. So we can suffer traumas which cause those symptoms. That's what I'm kind of, you know,
so
want to say.
Fatigue, loss of strength.
Yeah, and you know, if you've got that, if you've had the old procedure, right? Well, that you can't take that out, right?
Mm.
So do the best you can. Say, well, okay, well, if it was some of these genetically modifying components within the procedure that's doing it, causing some kind of inflammation, which they're talking about, which think is beyond it's beyond German new medicine,
Mm.
because that's kind of manipulating the genetic processes in the body to create these spike proteins which cause inflammation, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you um, beat yourself with a big stick across the head, you're going to get a bruise. Now,
Mm.
that's not a biological conflict. It's the flipping
Yeah.
big stick that's doing that to you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
yeah, so it's the same with the procedure that we're talking about. It's the procedure, but if it's not, what I would do is I would do something like EFT,
Hmm.
um,
Which is
or
emotional technique. Yeah.
emotional freedom technique, or go to a hypnotherapist like yourself, or go for some therapy, um, or just change your perspective and say, look, you know what? Some of these symptoms could actually be directly caused by my worry, the worry that procedure has caused in me.
Yeah.
So, in a way, that's sort of, oh, right. So if I stop, it's kind of not so bad. It's sort
Mm.
of like, well, I've had some control over that.
Mm.
Yeah. So therefore, I can change my mind
Mm.
about it. And also, you have to bear in mind that symptoms are part of a, if it is being caused by your shock of what you've done to yourself, which is basically it's what you do to yourself, because you go into these places where you have the procedure done, you go
Mm.
in there as a free person, you go in by your own volition, and you
Yeah.
roll your sleeve up and you basically ask them to put that into you, right?
Mm.
So um you have you know done that, right? But if the symptoms have also been caused by your own action, your own thoughts, well, that is reversible.
Mm.
You can change your perspective on them now. You can go, oh my God,
So
yeah,
we can heal the symptoms that are caused through our
perspective.
perspective. We
Yeah,
can't we
we
can't
can,
heal things through German new medicine if we've been poisoned or
yes.
taken
Yeah,
something.
that's right. Yeah.
Like, so German new medicine works on disease that is caused through biological thinking or through thinking that.
Yeah, it's through the activity. It's worked on symptoms which are initiated by the psyche
Mm.
within the brain as it responds to life.
Yeah.
Right. Now, some of the symptoms this gentleman has talked about could be part of that mechanism. So
Mm.
you have to think, right, change my perspective on it. The first thing is to realize, oh, well, if that's the case, then I need to stop worrying about it, because my worrying about it could be causing it.
Yeah.
And it's not so worrisome. It's not so worrying if you realize that you're worrying about it could be causing it.
Mm.
It sort of gives us a kind of way into that loop to stop it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if people have chosen to do something, they're most likely better off believing in what they've chosen to do. Because if you're second guessing yourself all the time, that's not going to be helpful, is it?
Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't say anybody should believe in something that might not be terribly good for us, right? But if it has resulted in symptoms like this gentleman has
Mm.
reported, right, those symptoms could be a cause of his change in his. He now wishes he didn't have that, or
Mm.
it could be the symptoms could be caused by his psyche reacting to that
Mm.
uh, procedure he had done. So
Mm.
if the psyche is reacting to that procedure and causing the symptoms, then it is reversible if you
Mm.
can pull yourself out of that loop, right? If you realize, oh, it's my worry about that which is actually partly to do, or majorly to do, with the cause of that symptom. And if you understand the 5 biological laws, if you learn this work of Dr. Hammer's, which everybody should do, then you can see that some symptoms are actually the body healing symptoms, like things like inflammation are always part of the healing phase. So, when I work with people, I'm always trying to figure out what the symptoms are, and if they're healing symptoms, and if they're ongoing all the time, then all that's happening is that person's in a loop that's reactivating something, and then it goes into healing again. And it's not, the thing that needs to be fixed is this loop. It's not the symptom.
Yeah.
And yes, so it's learn a little bit about German medicine. Everybody should do this. You can go on the internet and you can look at, there's a fabulous websites that there's free-new-medicine.com. Fabulous website. You can download that literature in any language that you can speak, right? There's also another one, learninggnm.com. I believe that's in many languages too. Again, it gives you knowledge which then allows you to unthread the problem, and some parts of that problem may well be fixable.
Yeah.
You see, and then it becomes, right, I've got to change my perspective. Well, if it's only my worry that's causing that, that takes the worry away from it.
Yeah.
And sometimes when you stop worrying, the symptom changes, and it might change, well, not for the worse, but it might become more. Now, if you know German medicine, you know that that's a sign that there's more healing happening. Because if you don't know German medicine, you might think, oh my God, it's gotten worse.
Yeah.
You see? So this is the knowledge that we need to learn, so that when our symptoms, let's say the inflammation flares up, when I've made that perspective change on the issue, on the procedure, then you know that it's a healing symptom and it will pass. It's got to get worse before it gets better. So it's even, you can look at something like the inflammation getting worse. It can be like, oh, a worry, or it can be a confirmation that you've actually now properly resolved the issue and it is getting more inflamed, and in a week's time it will reduce and it'll go away.
Yeah.
You with me? So it's sort of kind of difficult to answer things very quickly, because German medicine's got these 5 laws and they all interact. But it's not, if I can understand it, anyone can get it, So it's something that we've got to learn, we should learn, and it's a compass, allowing us to unthread the problem. It may well be the procedure that's doing it, and then, well, I don't know what you can do then. That's far beyond what I can know about. But if it's your emotional fear over what you've done or what that's doing to you, then that can be worked on. But you have to bear in mind that if you do good work on that, the symptom might get worse before it gets better. So don't turn an improvement in the don't turn a flare up, which is actually an improvement, don't turn that into another conflict which causes another condition, because that's what happens with us. That's what causes 90% of secondary cancers, according to doctors' research, right? Dr. Hammer's research. It's actually the worry of the first cancer causes the next one. Now, so we've got
Makes
to
sense, because animals never hear about their diagnoses, do they?
No, they don't. And they don't get secondaries. I mean, that's why. Or if they do, if they do get a secondary, it's a straight biological connection. Let's say if a dog's bowel cancer does restrict the passage of material through the bowel, well, then he will get liver cancer, because to help him digest more food, more nutrients out of the food, because not much food is getting past. right? So that'll be a biological connection. And the same thing happens in human beings, according to Dr. Hammer's research. Same thing happens. But what happens much more often in humans is we get the shock. Oh, I've got bowel cancer. Oof, next thing you know, you've got lung cancer because we've had a death fright, because we understand that bowel cancer is, going to kill us. We're told that. Really, bowel cancer is just trying to help us digest something that's annoying us in life. But we don't know. We're not told that. We're told, oh, it's genetic or something, right? You've eaten too much, cheese or something, right? So it's going to kill you. Everything's going to kill you, kill you, kill you. All these germs are kill, kill, kill. But Dr. Hammer turns it all upside down and says, no, that's a lot of rubbish. That bowel cancer there is actually trying to help you digest something. It's trying to help you sort that argument out over the boundary of your garden with the next door neighbor, because you feel he's taken 3 inches of your garden or something, and it's really turning into solicitors and it's really annoying you, right? Oh, you end up, and then 4 months later you got bowel cancer. You don't make the connection, but Dr. Hammer makes that connection. He says, look, so that indigestible anger issue, if you resolve it, then this is what's going to happen. And then you're going to get these symptoms, bang, 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 bang. And also that secondary lung cancer that you've been diagnosed with now. Well, Dr. Hammer says, well, no, that's just caused because you had the death fear for your life. Yeah. So then that goes into healing. Oh my God. And then you've got healing happening everywhere. And that's how most of his patients, 90% of his patients all got well, because he was able to manage their situation so beautifully. Yeah. And he's joined all the dots. This is it. So now we know the maze. So we're in a maze. We've been given a diagnosis. Oh, you find yourself in the maze. His work gets us out of that maze.
I just want to take you back to the death fright conflict that you were talking about. Presumably lots of people are going through that right now and have been for about 2 years.
You can only know that when you see the symptom. Dr. Hammer's research, the German New Medicine, it says that the psyche is a leading component. When the psyche takes experiences, or when the psyche processes the event, it creates a symptom. The symptom tells us what the psyche has experienced. So if a lot of people are developing alveolar lung cancer or alveolar tissue in the lungs, then a lot of people will have suffered a death fright. Okay. Either personally or for somebody that they care about. Okay. Yeah. But if a lot of people, which is the case, are suffering pneumonia-like symptoms, then what that Dr. Hammer's work tells us is what people have suffered en masse is a fear of something within their territory, something that you can't see or hear, but it might get you, right? And a sense of isolation, because let's face it, we're told to. I mean, when we're in danger, what other species goes and hides on its own? None. They all jump together as a pack to protect each other. But we're told to do something which is, potentially, it's just the exact opposite of what biologically we would do. So consequently, when we suffer the territorial fear, or the left-handers would suffer the territorial fear, but they would start to get their larynx would start to get involved, as opposed to the lung, the bronchial networks. See, again, the left-handers have the advantage. You see, they're born to survive, right? So we get the fear. The right-handers get the fear in the chest, hits the chest in the bronchial network, and the isolation causes the kidneys to close up, so the fluid floods into you can't urinate it out, so the body builds up with fluid. Then the fluid will migrate to where the other process is happening in the lungs, so therefore you get asthma. You see? And so that's what would be expected. And it's been so beautifully created. That's all I can say. It's just strange how everything seems to be facilitating that biological reaction. But I suppose to be philosophical, what's really causing this situation on the planet at the moment, what's really causing it is the fact that we do not know five simple laws. If every man and every woman, every adult and every person old enough to, think, knew 5 laws, there would be no situation at present. No situation at present. And there would be no need for any procedures at present. There would just be, it would have not happened at all. Because, but that's the power of knowledge,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that we're living through times when the sharing of knowledge is particularly perilous or difficult, or you have to go underground to be able to share that knowledge. So that website where people could learn about those 5 biological laws, like let's say there's some people listening in today and they want to take their lives into their own hands and learn about how they can self-heal. Can you just remind me of the website again?
I would suggest that the best website, I mean, there are many websites, so you just go on your search engine, right? DuckDuckGo or something like that, Firefox or whatever it's called, right? And you'd put in German New Medicine. You can go on Facebook. There's a load of groups on Facebook. You can join those groups and you can start to learn it that way. You can do a search and you might find a really good website is free. It's www.free-new-medicine.com. Now there you can download it. You can just select your language. You give the guy who wrote that website a very good donation, because it's a valuable thing you're getting.
Yeah.
And you download that book in your language, and then you start to absorb it. The first 50 pages are all about, reactions and what happens, and it's the type of thing you probably need to read a couple of times to get it. And then once you've understood it, you can then go into the book and you can look at any conflict and you will be able to understand biologically what's happening, and you'll be able to look into your life and think, well, what might be causing that? And then you will be empowered. So that's what I would do. I would try that website, and I'd also just do a search for German New Medicine. And it's also called Germanic Heilkunde. It's some German. It's been rebranded, I believe, because there was some issues with calling it German New Medicine, because I think Dr. Hammer eventually said, I don't want even to use the word medicine because I'm so sick of medicine.
Yeah.
So he couldn't just call it German New. He called it something else,
Wow, I want to absolutely thank you so much, because you've answered all these questions for people, and you've been a wealth of information, and I have to absolutely honor your devotion to helping people help themselves. I just think it's a really honorable thing to do. It's sounds like a complete calling. Are you okay for me to announce to the world what we'll be talking about next time? Because we've already agreed to.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was great. Yeah, if you hear something here, my son has just woken up in the side there, so he's just a bit grumpy.
Oh well, I'll cut you loose if you like. Just to share with you, in our next show, we're going to talk about miscarriage and pregnancies that don't make it through to the end, because I think there's quite a big story behind that. Is that right, Robert?
Yes, the German New Medicine has a lot to say about that, and the conflicts which cause us, the woman's body to, for some reason, reject, the fetus. So, yeah, that's hope that'll do a lot of good for a lot of people and help.
Yeah.
Help happy outcomes is what we're after.
Yes, I think that's a lovely idea. Okay, I'm going to let you go, but thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to kick you out, okay, so you can get to your son, and I'm just going to say goodbye. But anyway, so much love to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure.
As always. Thank you so much, Robert. Thank you.
Okay.
Wow, how amazing was that? I just cut him off just as he was about to say something. So if you hear me, I'm very sorry, Robert, but I didn't want to just bring you on then because I could hear your son, fussing for you. So I absolutely, as a mum of small children, I know how important it is for those children to feel happy. We've just got a message in from Mr. M. That's my husband, Carl, saying, great show. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. So I'd love to put out a shout out. So thank you, Shannon, for joining us from Texas. Thank you, Gary, from Central Portugal. Thank you to all the other people that listened, but didn't want to disclose who they were. That's fine too. Thank you so much for all your questions. If you'd like to know more about German new medicine, like Robert said, go to www.free-new-medicine.com, where you can absolutely download as much information as you need, and you can also leave a generous donation should you wish to. I've checked it out already, and I've actually put a link to it on my phone. So the moment I see anything or feel anything right now, I'm straight on that page, just trying to find out what's going on, because I really think it empowers us to really help ourselves. And that's what it's all about, in my opinion. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us. Please do join us another time. Of course, I just took Robert's email address off by accident. Actually, it's his website. If you want to contact Robert and maybe do some work with him, then you can reach out to him. It's www.robert-jardine.com. Like, as you've just experienced, he's an absolute wealth of information and is absolutely dedicated to helping people heal themselves. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today. Please do pop back another day. Hope to see you soon. But anyway, just take care, look after yourselves. Sending you lots and lots of love. Bye for now. Mwah.